Live. Thank you for being here, hitting the button right now. Appreciate you all showing up live. Okay, and today we're going to talk a little bit more about how to metabolize and support the body's immune response to the spike protein. And I was just blown away by several recently published studies that are finding the persistence of the mRNA-derived spike protein after mRNA vaccinations. And I feel like we're at a place in society where we can actually talk about this. This is no longer a theoretical concern. This is no longer a conspiracy theory. Many people are rightfully so concerned that they might have persistence of a non-human protein in their body that is eliciting inflammation. And so therefore, we should be able to convey to them strategies and potential ways to ameliorate the inflammation that may result of that. And one of the studies we're going to talk about today, my friends, what happens to be published in the journal Circulation here, titled Circulating Spike Protein Detected in Post-COVID-19 mRNA Vaccine Myocarditis. There was actually another follow-up study in the same journal talking about how several studies have actually found, especially in pericarditis and mRNA vaccine-induced myocarditis, detectable levels of free spike protein within the blood. Now, again, I'm not spreading any conspiracy theories. These are published right in accessible peer-reviewed journals. Now, you might be saying, well, Mike, this is probably only pertinent to people who have actual clinically defined and diagnosed myocarditis, but several other studies have found persistence of the free spike protein after mRNA vaccination. So I just think it's important that we're able to just talk about this. And so I want to share with you some ideas that I have about this. Now, I'm a little bit reluctant to use the term detoxification. Your body's constantly detoxifying. There's enzymes in your gastrointestinal tract, in your upper airway, in your liver that are constantly being expressed. You're mobilizing lead, mercury that you're exposed to, hormones, right? Your hormones are being metabolized. Detoxification is an ongoing process. So I'm a little leery or reluctant to use that term, but because this is a term that many of you have used in the comments, have sent on direct messages over on Facebook and social media like Instagram, I'm going to use that term, but again, it's not my favorite word because detoxification is always happening, and some of the strategies that I'm going to talk about today are just theoretical in nature, and the idea is to actually support immune system health, and that's where we are. So first of all, friends, I would like to just encourage you to hit that like button if you're enjoying the content. Please leave a comment in the chat if you're actually here live. Let me know where you're from, and especially if you find this information helpful, I would love to know that. So let's first dive into it. I have some notes here and some ideas and tactics, strategies that I would like to share with you. Now, there's some really good news for many of you, whether or not you've been immunized or not. I think we all know people who have had the immunizations and have had no side effects. And I think this is a really important finding that was talked about in many of these papers that I've been diving into. Individuals, most oftentimes, if they are going to have a problem after receiving one of these immunizations, it's after the second dose. So you need to ask yourself, if you had to get immunized for work or you wanted to do it for whatever reason, if you didn't have any complications or challenges or a sore arm or side effects or a fever. I've had many people report to me, close friends, family, and so forth, clients report that they felt like they got run over by a truck after the second dose. But I've also had many people say, I didn't even notice anything on any of them. I'm totally fine, never got a headache, never got any side effects. So if you're in that category where after the second dose, you didn't experience any problems in terms of, increased heart rate, shortness of breath, sweating, fever-like symptoms, then you probably don't need to worry about anything. And that's a longer conversation, but I'll just leave it at that. Now, if you did experience some complications, just understand that there are things that you can do to support your health now. And I just want to highlight one particular study here, and the title of this one, let me pull it up here. This is an interesting article. Again, it was published in Circulation. This is not like any, random journal here. This is a major peer-reviewed journal. The title here is Shedding Light on Mechanisms of Myocarditis with COVID-19 mRNA Vaccinations. And they talk about the presence of the free spike protein and the complications therein and how it could be characterized as a pro-inflammatory stimuli. So that's where I'm going to focus on this particular, conversation about how to improve immunologic tolerance. And we're going to focus on vitamin D, vitamin A, and omega-3 fats, and exercise and sauna, in short. But let me just read to you. and natural ACE inhibitors. It turns out that ashwagandha is a natural ACE inhibitor because it seems that the presence of free spike protein, and by the way, my friends, this can probably occur as well after naturally acquired infection. Many of us are getting COVID as well, and this is circulating. And so this is pertinent for everyone, not just people who have had immunizations, but they say central to this. Let me start over. They say central to the discussion is the potential of the spike protein in the development of myocarditis. Spike protein has been implicated in pericyte dysfunction. We talked about that before. Endothelial cell and myocyte injury and downregulation of ACE2 expression. Unopposed ACE signaling and angiotensin-mediated effects, apoptosis, and pro-inflammation. So one thing you can do at home is just monitor your blood pressure. And so that could be something that you could just to see. If your blood pressure hasn't historically increased and you're still concerned, probably don't need to worry about that much. But if historically you were normotensive or you had really low blood pressure and your blood pressure is elevated, you might want to consider natural ACE inhibitors. And I'm pretty sure that we shouldn't be using these terms on YouTube, ACE inhibitors and so forth, but research has shown natural compounds such as ashwagandha can function as a natural ACE inhibitor. And this might really help with the sort of mechanisms by which the spike protein could potentially change hemodynamics and blood pressure. So that's something to consider. The other thing to consider is, as this study talks about, is how the spike protein can induce sustained inflammation within the endothelium. So remember, the endothelium are the cells of your cardiovascular system. I want to share with you just another paper here. Several studies, again, talking about persistence of the spike protein many days after immunization. So that's where we're going here. Now, what we want to focus here in is the T regulatory cells. So your T reg cells are cells that help to quell chronic inflammatory responses in the body, because it turns out that your innate immune system can get really revved up, and it doesn't have good feedback mechanisms to help to quell that. And that's where the adaptive immune system comes in. Remember, your T cells and your B cells are part of your adaptive immune system. So the T cells, specifically a subtype called the T regulatory cell, can be helpful at quelling or calming down the smoldering chronic inflammation. And you might be saying, okay, well, if T reg cells are important, how can we support them? So there's kind of three things that we can do. Well, really four with exercise. But from a nutritional standpoint, we can increase the levels of EPA and DHA. These are the omega-3 fats in our body. Studies have actually shown that omega-3 fats like DHA have been shown to improve the functionality of the T regulatory cells. And so this is, I know fish oil is controversial, right? Some people say they get oxidized. Some people say never take fish oil. But there's a test that you can implement that's very affordable. Our sister company offers it. It's called the Omega-3 Index. And this is a $49 test. And this would give you a general idea about your omega-3 fatty acid status. How much of your cell membrane, that's where the omega-3s go, is present. And it's a blood spot test. It's just like pricking your finger for a glucose test. This is a great test, especially if you were concerned about the topic that we're talking about here today. So that's just something to consider. An omega-3 index that I would aim for is about 8%, 8 to 10% in this context. Not everyone needs to be that high. If you've had a first-degree relative that had a stroke or a heart attack, you might want to consider maintaining that. I keep mine around 6 or 7, right? But you don't want to go, you don't want to shoot for the moon. The highest you might want to aim for on that is around 10%. And the way that you would improve that is a high quality third-party tested omega-3 fish oil product. Okay, so the omega-3 index, $49 test, see where you're at. That could be helpful. Also, vitamin D and vitamin A. These compounds have been shown to actually help these T regulatory cells, which again are so important at quelling this chronic inflammation. And I think that's what you're seeing in post-long COVID, and that's what we might be seeing here with regards to the injuries that we're referring to today. And again, these things can be, the body is so great at restoring homeostasis, and supporting that process via nutrition can be helpful. Losing belly fat. So we know that leptin is actually a suppressor of these helpful T regulatory cells. And so this is another consideration here as well. So people that are overweight, you want to consider losing that body fat to help to improve these Treg cells that could potentially decrease any chronic inflammation and make the immune system a little bit more resilient. So that's something to definitely consider. Now, you might be thinking, well, what else could I do? What about detoxification, Mike? Well, we do know that inflammation is linked with oxidative stress. And one way to help support the body in that context is with glutathione support. Now, you might be saying, well, direct glutathione, it's so expensive. And yes, it is. And it's really non-specific. So what I would consider is an N-acetylcysteine glycine combination. This has been shown to be helpful as a way to improve the body's and support the body's facilitation, of, particularly the cell's creation of glutathione. We know that N-acetylcysteine and glycine are actually amino acids. And these amino acids can help the cells auto-regulate their glutathione levels. And so that's why it's almost considered superior than just direct glutathione administration. We know that antioxidant research has been conflicted, right? Vitamin C, vitamin A, vitamin E, vitamin E, and vitamin C, there's controversy, and especially even beta carotene, and taking these direct antioxidants because they're not targeted. You actually want the cells to auto-regulate. And that's why even taking things like NRF2 activator compounds, for example, green tea, we know that curcumin, pterostilbene, resveratrol have been shown to do that. This helps the cells make their own cells that are in need. For example, the epithelial cells, the myocardial cells, the pericytes, and so forth within the heart. So that's important. Another strategy that I would absolutely consider is contrast therapy, heat therapy. We know heat is so good. It's an exercise mimetic. It really does help the endothelial cells that we're talking about here that may be, unfortunately, potentially targeted by natural infection and of course the other thing. So that's something to consider because the sauna has been shown to improve the elasticity and the functionality of these endothelial cells, which are very important. They're the functional unit. You know, if you think about a brick wall, it looks pretty, it's a brick wall, but it's brick by brick. Your cardiovascular system is built brick by endothelial cells. And so if those little individual bricks are crumbling, the structure of the wall or the house will then crumble as well. And so it turns out that both exercise and sauna therapy is very important to support the endothelial cells. So that's another thing to consider. Along with the omega-3 fat testing, omega-3 fats, N-acetylcysteine glycine combinations, as well as vitamin D and vitamin A. But again, the people who might want to consider increasing their support in this context would be people who did have an adverse reaction after the second administration of the thing, because it turns out that that might be a little bit more of a hallmark that is associated with more of the higher probability potentially of having more sustained inflammation. But of course, underlying health is very important. And I know other people have talked about bromelain and these different enzymes and this, none of this stuff is provable. None of this stuff has actually been clinically studied. I'm just sharing with you foundations about what we know about the immune system. We know the Treg cells, very important at controlling chronic inflammation. We know that reducing leptin is a very important way of curtailing or decreasing chronic inflammation. We know that compressing our glycemic variability, people that have hyperglycemia, high levels of blood glucose, they tend to have higher levels of inflammation. There's a different transcription factor known as nuclear factor kappa beta, NF-kappa B, that when activated in the context of hyperglycemia can drive pro-inflammatory processes. And so again, we want to eat low glycemic index foods. Consider possibly intermittent fasting or prolonged fasting. Those are things to consider as well. And some of the things that might show up on blood work potentially would be possibly an elevated C-reactive protein, although that wouldn't necessarily occur all the time. I wouldn't necessarily go down the road of looking at TNF-alpha and interleukin-6 in your blood, although that has been studied in the context of myocarditis in this particular study here. And of course, my friends, we know that these inflammatory mediators will increase after COVID as well, after the natural infection. It's not just the so-called interventions that we're talking about. The natural infection as well is an inherently inflammatory pathogen. Okay, so we want to again, in summary, omega-3 fatty acid status, check your omega-3 index. Make sure your vitamin D levels are optimal. We've talked about this over many videos over the past several years. Shoot for around 60 nanograms per ml as a target for vitamin D. Vitamin A and K2 can be synergistically combined with vitamin D. Right? We know the fat-soluble vitamins often occur together in nature. Think about cod liver oil, think about fish, and things like that. You do get D and A together. Okay. And then we want to think about strategies specifically to supporting the T regulatory cell. Exercise. We know that circadian rhythm health and optimization is very important. We know that sleep hygiene is very important. We also know that even mouth taping, if you breathe through your mouth when you're sleeping, that has been shown to increase leptin and chronic inflammation. So you can see how some people might already have a smoldering low-grade inflammation that could be exacerbated or worsened by the natural infection or the thing. And so this is why it's so important to focus on the foundations, my friends, to make sure that you are very healthy. Okay. Again, friends, I'm going to get to your live questions. If you're here right now, please hit that like button. Be sure to share this video as a direct text message with your friends because obviously when we talk about these topics, they're controversial. They shouldn't be. I mean, I don't know why this is controversial. We have articles in the journal Circulation now. We have articles in New England Journal of Medicine, believe it or not, now talking about exactly what we're talking about today. So it shouldn't be controversial. This should have been talked about from the get-go and studied from the get-go, but it wasn't, and that's why we're here now. So I'm grateful that you're here. I'm grateful for your likes, your comments, and I'm going to pop out the chat, and we're going to answer some live questions. So where are y'all from? Who's here from Washington? Anyone? It's funny, Washington, there was just actually a PhD MD from University of Washington who admitted that she has received every one of the things and has been wearing masks diligently since the beginning of the pandemic, and somehow she still got COVID. My gosh, so that means that COVID is not over, my friends. So we need to continue to mask, was the conclusion. Okay, we have a super chat here from Dr. Iron Mom. Thank you for the super chat. Nattokinase, magnesium, turmeric, black seed oil, zinc, D3, K2, vitamin C, etc. This individual, I don't know if it's a man or female, is vaccinated, but is helping people in Long Island, which is great. So thank you for the super chat. Thanks for being here. Yeah, so many people are vaccinated, and it's like, yeah, you know, I think the worst thing that you can do is manifest ill health by thinking that the thing that you got could be problematic. I think it's helpful just to change your mindset and think, you know what, the nurse gave me a saline shot, you know, and just go from there. I think it's really important to just not dwell on this. I've had several friends that are so concerned, calling me all the time. What if I'm going to have it? I'm like, don't even think like that. The mind is so powerful. I've shared with you this story a million times, but in World War I and World War II, many of the physicians treating soldiers ran out of morphine. And you can imagine the casualties that occur in war in that way. And the doctors would administer saline and stick a needle that had nothing in it into the bag and say, I'm now injecting you with morphine. Your pain will go away. And just like that, the soldiers in 10, 15 seconds had no pain. So the mind is so powerful. So do not ruminate on negative thoughts. Okay. I'm seeing a lot of comments here about N-acetylcysteine by itself. Remember, glutathione is a tripeptide. The rate-limiting amino acids to make glutathione are not only N-acetylcysteine, but also glycine, my friend. So you want to take them together. Glycine, NAC together. When you think NAC, think glycine. Those two need to be paired together. Unfortunately, many companies, they only give you NAC, and that's what makes myoscience different. So consider myoscience in that context. So that's the optimal way to support glutathione production. We have folks here from Canada. We have Rob Bacon in the house. Rob Bacon, what's going on? Let's see. My system is saying there's feedback, but I don't hear any feedback. What else? We have folks from Peru, Austin. We have Albuquerque, New Mexico. Buenos Aires, Argentina. Thank you for being here. Amazing. I love my Latino and Latina friends. I am not on Rumble. I probably should. Toronto in the house. Kansas. Eat apples, guys. Yeah, apples. The downside about apples is they are heavily sprayed with pesticides. And y'all know the story about the Fateful Harvest book. Check out this book. It's phenomenal. Fateful Harvest goes into the fact that many pesticides are actually enriched in heavy metals, lead, cadmium, mercury, and arsenic because chemical companies pay fertilizer companies to dispose of their toxic waste. Yes, this is a true story. It's been going on all throughout the world for a long time, probably more so here in the US and other parts of the world. But guess what? Imagine eating an organic apple thinking it's so good for you. Unbeknownst to you, the fertilizer that was used on that apple actually had chemicals from chemical companies because that fertilizer company took money from them in order to disperse it across the land. This is a true story. Read the book, Fateful Harvest. It is fantastic. We have folks from Denver. We have not bromelain. Bromelain, yeah, I think bromelain and these systemic enzymes could be helpful as well. But it's totally theoretical, though. I mean, how does bromelain specifically affect things? I don't know. I'm talking just big picture, the fundamentals that we can actually show. We know the T regulatory cells are important. Omega-3 fats, exercise, vitamin D, vitamin A, very important. Okay. Is there any diet-related advice for reducing or eliminating spike proteins? Yeah, this is a good question. Yeah, again, going back to what we talked about, a low glycemic index diet. What we want to do, my friends, is take the background inflammation off the body so that it can resolve the chronic inflammation from other things. That's the whole goal here. Again, there's viruses, there's pathogens, there's all sorts of, proteins that you're going to be exposed to in your life. And so that's why you want to reduce the background inflammation so your immune system is more snappy, more resilient. It's like taking your computer. Imagine when your computer has 19 different software programs running. You have PowerPoint, you have Word, you have Excel, you're running YouTube videos, you have Photoshop open. Imagine how bogged down that computer is going to be if you want to do something on that computer. Take another computer that has nothing open. It's been freshly cleaned. The cache has been purged. You restarted it. That computer's going to function much better. That's how you have to think about your body. Whether we're talking about the thing here today or we're talking about a virus in the future, you want to have a clean slate. You want to meditate in the morning. You want to have a bowel movement. Speaking of detoxification, the most detoxifying thing you can do is to take a crap every single day, to drink water. That's the most detoxifying thing you can do, believe it or not. Because when you don't go to the bathroom on a regular basis, number two, guess what happens? There's this whole phenomenon known as enterohepatic recirculation. You're recirculating all the shit, literally, that your liver detoxified. It can go back into systemic circulation. So if you're not taking a crap, literally, you're not detoxifying. You might want to consider things like magnesium citrate. The most poorly absorbed magnesium can help you to actually induce a bowel movement. Now, if you want to absorb your magnesium, you want a magnesium glycinate, magnesium malate, and so forth. But anyway, hemp seed oil, is it good for EFAs? It's not, unfortunately. It's not. It's going to be rich in alpha linoleic acid, ALA. We're talking about DHA, docosahexaenoic acid, and eicosapentaenoic acid, EPA. Okay. All right. How about keto or carnivore? Yeah, keto or carnivore is a great idea. It's a great idea for a lot of people. Again, we're talking about opening up that freshly started computer where the cache has been purged as opposed to all the programs running. If you're eating processed foods, pasta, bread, sweets, ice cream, all the programs are running in your immune system. Your immune system is going to be burdened. There's chronic smoldering inflammation. So shut that stuff down with a low carbohydrate style diet, with exercise, with walking after a meal, doing yoga, going in the sauna, maybe doing a cold bath here and there. Very helpful. All right. Okay, Second Street Marvel says, I go poo every morning and drink plenty of water. Hopefully you're also supplementing with some electrolytes periodically as well. Second Street Marvel, good to see you here again. Okay. How to jumpstart a bowel movement. Yeah, this is a good question. It starts with the night before, making sure you're hydrated and making sure, remember, your bowels, the gastrointestinal tract, is influenced by your body's circadian clock system. So if you're going to bed at 2 a.m, then midnight, then 10 p.m., your gut doesn't know what time it is, so you're probably not going to have a bowel movement in the morning. So that's important. If you wake up, you're kind of constipated, go for even if it's cloudy, expose your beautiful eyes to the beautiful outdoors. Entrain your body's circadian clock system with natural light. Very important. And then I think having a little warm coffee or tea does help. I think that is very helpful. Yes, fish oil is better than hemp seed oil for EPA, for fatty acids. Yes. Okay. Now, how to jumpstart a bowel movement? Well, to jumpstart, you could, there's things directly that I can mention from our sister company, Myoscience. It's called number 2. I'll just throw it out there. Number 2, magnesium citrate. It's got some other compounds that can help there. But I don't suggest being habituated to this. You want to naturally, that's something you use on vacation or when you travel or something like that, fine, periodically. But you want to get to the point where you can have some magnesium before bed. But I think it is important to consider, again, circadian rhythm health and hydration are going to be the best things for bowel movement, as well as exercise. Making sure you're exercising on a regular basis. You know what exercise does? It moves blood around. A lot of people don't move enough blood around, and they're dehydrated, and so this is why the bowels can get stagnant. Okay, we have Bill Sama Gates Layden. Thank you for being here. I got 1 dose of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine 15 months ago. Do I need to detox? You're probably totally fine, Bill. Probably totally fine 15 months ago. The adenovirus vector vaccines, to the best of my knowledge, have not been shown to have this sort of prolonged increase in the spike protein. So yeah, I respect the decisions you made and so forth, but I think it is important to remember that this prolonged elevation in the blood of free spike protein has actually more been characterized recently with the mRNA-based vaccine. So good question there. Okay. Yeah, so how do we detoxify? Yeah, so I just mentioned all those different things. We want to support the cell membrane health with EPA, DHA. We want to support the T regulatory cells. They're going to help with the inflammation and the sequestering herein. And so we know that the Treg cells are important. We talked about vitamin D, vitamin A, reducing leptin, reducing glycemic variability. Important. Oh, thank you, Zoleva. Appreciate you. What else? Yeah, so there's questions here that folks are saying that using cannabis in the morning can help with bowel movements. Sure, a little nicotine can help with that. So yeah, again, the sauna, I honestly, my friends, I talk about it a lot. I think, if there's just one thing that we could all do, no matter what you did in the last 3 years, go in the sauna. Get hot on purpose, stay hydrated, probably the best thing you could possibly do, as well as walking after meals and lifting weights 3 days a week. I mean, these are and then get your vitamin D up, take vitamin A, pair K2 with vitamin D, and test your omega-3 index. I mean, that's going to cover 95% of all your problems. I can really be confident in that. Okay. All right. Now, what about systemic enzymes? Another comment here about nattokinase and so forth. Yeah, I think nattokinase could be helpful for sure. There's serrapeptidase, trypsin, chymotrypsin. There's all these different enzymes. I think it's worthwhile for sure. It's theoretical. It's totally theoretical, but go for it. Yeah, if you have access to a high quality one, absolutely. What other questions do we have here? Bentonite and diatomaceous earth. Yeah, that's, what? It's a great, using clay and diatomaceous earth. I don't know that that's going to get systemic. It's a good question. Is that going to get systemic? Not really. Probably more in the gut. So if you were to go out to dinner and people aren't washing their hands when they're cooking your food, that could be something there for sure. But I'm not really sure how that would go systemic. So yeah, great question there. Okay. What other questions do we have, my friends? What do we got? And again, that word detoxing, I don't like to use it. You're detoxing right now. All of you are detoxing. So it's a loosely used word, but I know it's the word people associate with. But again, think support immune health. Vincent, thank you for being here. Vincent says, to tail his question, my brother had 1 dose of another type of vaccine 16 months ago, and as of recent has been kind of paranoid. This is what we want to avoid. We want to avoid the paranoia, my friends. As I mentioned earlier, if you were one of the people that had any sort of immunization that's related to COVID-19 over the past several years, and upon your second dose, you had no side effects, you probably don't even need to worry whatsoever. But being paranoid is the worst thing that you can do because that can actually cause ill health. So Vincent says, should he detox? Should he go in the sauna? Yes. Should he consider testing his omega-3 index to look at his ratio of EPA DHA because they do support immune health? Absolutely. Should he check his vitamin D levels and support vitamin D, K2, and vitamin A? Absolutely. Should he consider glycine NAC combos? Probably. It's not, it's really affordable. These amino acids can be helpful. What is the culprit behind sudden cardiac death? In fact, if you look at it, low omega-3 index has historically speaking, a low omega-3 index is actually a common culprit behind sudden cardiac death pre-COVID. Consider that. Who do you hear besides Bill Harris talking about that right now? No one. And this is so accessible and affordable. All of us should be knowing about this. Piero says NAC. Yeah, NAC and glycine. Think NAC, think glycine together. There's 2 rate-limiting amino acids to make glutathione, and that's NAC and glycine. Okay. Colloidal copper. And I've heard of colloidal silver, not colloidal copper, but it's news to me. Yeah, maybe give it a whirl. Again, the other thing we talked about is ashwagandha. Ashwagandha, a natural ACE inhibitor, something to consider. Potentially astragalus, potentially curcumin, right? These are things to be helpful. So again, Chi is saying NAC. NAC glycine combo. I think that would be a good for all of us. Just y'all saw what happened in Ohio, right? There's the polyvinyl chloride being burned off. This has got its way into Canada, presumably all throughout the eastern seaboard, Midwest. We should all be concerned about the things right now. So NAC glycine combo. Okay. Does glycine increase vasopressin? I have no idea. That's a good question. I have no idea. I'll look into it. Empowered mind. Do I really need to supplement with vitamin A? That's a good question. In this context, acute vitamin A supplementation might be helpful. Yeah. Polyvinyl chloride. Yeah. Okay. What do you know about the nicotine receptors and how, if they were full of nicotine, helped ward off COVID? I don't know anything about nicotine as it relates to COVID, but that's interesting. Zelensky protocol. I don't know that protocol. I don't. Good question. Is there a difference between 20-minute sauna or 20 minutes hot bath? Both are good. Both are good. Do a hot bath one day, do a hot sauna the other day. I think both are good. Getting hot on purpose is helpful in any manner. So check that out. So, friends, I very much appreciate your comments, your questions, your likes. Thank you for that. Your shares. Hopefully, there's no censorship on this video. That would be awesome. And I'm just grateful that you're here. So I'll be checking your comments as the video goes on. I'm sure more people will have comments and so on. But I just want to thank you for being here. If there's anything else I can help out with, let me know. If this was helpful, please leave the like button or hit the like button and leave a comment and let me know. And we will catch you on a future episode down the road. Have an awesome day. Bye now.